Prepare for takeoff, please.
It's the Shipping Pod. Hello and welcome to the Shipping Pod. I am your host, Tim Dooner, back from a brief hiatus. I know, it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since I last did one of these, a few weeks. So, thought I'd get one in here though. I recently did an interview with Nick and Sarah from Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. They are a Canadian-based supply chain podcast, a bit like this one, but they're more interview focused, so they interviewed me on their show. I thought I'd bring them on mine so we could talk about some of the challenges of starting a podcast and getting it out to the masses. While I was away, my central air went out. That was just in time for a heat wave, because that's the way things work, right? I guess the system was overtaxed. It ended up being a transformer inside of the furnace. It got fixed, but now the weather's been beautiful for a week. It's been like in the 70s, so I haven't even needed it. But it's good to have it back up. During the heat wave, we have all these little black kitchen ants, and I put out taro traps. It seems to get rid of them. They come back 2 weeks later, put out the taro trap, gets rid of them. They come back again. They were back during the heat wave, but my son, he's almost 3 years old, loves the ants. He has them crawl on his hands. I don't know. Little kids, they're not grossed out by it just yet. So he has the ants on him, and he's really fascinated by them. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put on a documentary on YouTube so you can learn a bit about ants. I look up ant documentaries for kids on YouTube. Throw it on, go to finish getting ready. You know, I'm upstairs for, 2-3 minutes, making some coffee, making some breakfast, moving around the house. Well, 10-15 minutes later, I come back to look at the TV and they are about to start one of those bullet ant rite of passage tribal rituals. And you know, I don't need my kid having nightmares and not going to sleep. If I was alone, yeah, I might sit and watch the ritual, but no, I'm not letting him watch a 12-year-old boy stick his hand in a husk full of bullet ants whose bites are supposedly one of the most painful things on the planet. So I managed to dive for the Xbox One controller, turn it off, get that out of there. But hopefully he learned some good aspects of ants, their colonies, sharing. Hey, can't go wrong with ants. Maybe I'll get him an ant farm for his birthday in September. Guys, if you'd like to give back to the show, you can do so in one of two ways. Check us out on iTunes, subscribe over there, leave a review. We have 25 reviews so far. You guys are doing fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. The other way is via our Patreon, patreon.com/theshippingpod. Patreon is a site that allows you, the listener, to give back to shows like this. There's a variety of different donation tiers that allow you a number of different things, from on-air shout-outs to small ads for your company, consulting. All the info's there, patreon.com/theshippingpod. Our guests today are Nick and Sarah, the hosts of Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. They combined for 30 plus years in the industry, and they are knowledgeable in all aspects of logistics and supply chain. Nick has been on the operations side. He's a super problem solver and a master aircraft specialist. Sarah, she's making waves on the marketing side, breaking down industry barriers. Make sure to subscribe to them on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or whatever podcast app that you use. Their website is twobabestalksupplychain.com. That's the number 2, babestalksupplychain.com. Check it out. And now, on to them. I apologize, the sound quality may drop a little bit. I had to do this over VoIP, so I hope it doesn't sound too AM radio-ish, but I think we got some pretty good clarity over the line. So strap in, hop aboard, let's get to it. I'm here today with Nick and Sarah from Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. They are a Canadian-based supply chain podcast, have started relatively recently, but are on their, I believe, 44th episode. And I was recently a guest on their show. However, I don't believe that episode has aired yet. It should be out in a few weeks, and I'll let you guys know via Twitter when that comes up. But without further ado, Nick, Sarah, how are you today?
I am well. I can't really speak for Sarah, but I'm well. And Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having us on the show. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have some people to talk to. I usually do a lot of news and topic focused. I've done a few interviews, but it's always nice to have a few other voices to bounce ideas off of.
Absolutely. We definitely agree with that because I don't know if everybody knows, but on our show we've got guests that come on. So it's fun and it's a good conversation. Makes for good conversation.
Yeah, you guys, we'll get to that in just a second, but I mentioned that you're Canadian-based, and you are by Toronto. You're in Mississauga? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Mississauga. I should know this. Mississauga.
Yeah. Do you want us to spell that?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So I have a question for you. You started this podcast, and because you brought it up, you're an interview-based podcast. We'll kind of Pulp Fiction this. We'll move around a little bit, but to give people a general idea of what their show is and why they should listen to this conversation. You do a show that's primarily interview-based, correct?
Yes.
And your guests are typically people that are involved in some aspect of supply chain.
Yeah. We get a lot of supply chain experts. They're mostly executive level supply chain experts from various different companies in supply chain.
And you guys work for, aside from doing the show Two Babes Talk Supply Chain, you work for a logistics company, correct? Are they affiliated with the show? Do they sponsor the show? How does that relationship work?
They're a sponsor of the show. Yeah.
So you guys started this show, was it last year that it began, third quarter of last year, fourth quarter last year?
Yeah, so how we started back in May last year, and it was really just sort of an experiment. I'm definitely a disruptor in the marketing space for supply chain, logistics and supply chain, and I like to try different things. So I approached Nick back in May last year and just said, hey, what do you think about doing a podcast with me? And let's just sort of see where it goes. And so we started with video as well as audio. And then we pared down and focused on audio in August. And that's when we decided to become a weekly show because we were getting a lot of traction. We were getting a lot of downloads, people really interested in our show, and a lot of people interested in coming on the show to talk about the various different aspects of supply chain.
The development of the show, so back in May, you had this idea to do the podcast. When you guys sat down, you met with Nick, you threw the idea at him. Nick, what were your thoughts on that? And what was the core goal of the show? What did you want it to be thematically? What did you want it to be presentation-wise? And are you there with it now? How exactly you envisioned it? Has it changed or modulated at all since you started?
Yeah, the goal for me was really just to help people out in general. Day to day, I see problems all the time with people trying to ship stuff across the border and not having their ducks in a row, you could say. So just to put information out in the air that's not really privileged to a lot of people, or a lot of people don't know, they just haven't looked into it or haven't experienced it, and just try and help the public out with small issues they have, or maybe sometimes big issues. I've dealt with a lot of problems from shipping anything from just straight eggs to whole aircraft. So that was basically my goal, and just give back to kind of community.
Yeah, and I guess for me, how we started, we actually didn't really know where this was going to go and how it was going to really end up being. We just sort of went with it. We we decided to approach a couple of people to see if they wanted to be on the show, and we've done a few tweaks here and there since last May, and obviously gone weekly, and I think that we've been able to, tighten it up as to what we're doing and how we're doing it. But going into it, I don't think we really didn't really know what we were doing, to be honest.
Yeah, it was just, let's just see what happens kind of thing.
So neither of you had produced a podcast before, correct?
No, not at all. I did a couple little MC gigs at trade shows or the Christmas parties, but never a podcast.
You had to pick up all the back end stuff, like finding a host, going through the process of getting listed on iTunes and Stitcher and dealing with an RSS and Google Play and the millions of different forums you have to sign up, and you learn there's a ton of podcast hosts out there, right? And some use RSS, some don't. It can be daunting at first.
Yeah, it definitely was. And we were kind of lucky because we had a few other people that were really interested in what we were doing. And so they were working with us and kind of helped us sort of navigate that. They had never done it before either, but they were more research oriented and was able to navigate that for us. And so we decided on using Libsyn. Right from the very beginning. From all of our research, we thought that was the best platform for us. And then we got onto iTunes, got onto Stitcher, and then most recently did Google Play, got onto Google Play.
So in your format, you initially decided, and you have still maintained this interview format. I imagine there's some inherent hurdles coming into that in terms of arranging, because there's two of you, so arranging your schedule and Nick's schedule, plus your guest schedule to a time where you can all sit down and get the actual show recorded, produced, and released on a weekly basis. How have you worked around those situations? How have you dealt with, guest cancellations or just finding guests in general?
I could say my hair has never been curly until I started this. No, sometimes it's difficult. I do take work priority before the podcast first, just because that is what pays my bread and butter and my truck payments and all the other fun payments I got to make. But we normally kind of keep it similar every week, so we kind of could work around it and know what to expect. Once in a while, we'll get we'll do it on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, or we'll maybe do it on a Friday instead of a Thursday. But for the most part, it's pretty consistent, so it's easy to work around. I can plan for it a couple days in advance, and it won't have an effect on my desk.
Yeah, and we usually do it the same time, so the same day, same time every week. Sometimes we include a Monday, so usually we do it on a Thursday in the afternoon. Sometimes we will have to move it to a Monday or add a Monday, just because of a guest schedule. But I'll only do Mondays and Thursdays, just so it's fair to not only myself, Nick, and obviously our executive producer Mike, so that everybody kind of has an idea of when it could be or when it will be.
And there has been a couple times where I couldn't make it because I had aircrafts that come up and I had to go to the airport and deal with issues.
Yeah, and we have had cancellations. One time when we had a cancellation, the three of us just did an episode about our experience in logistics, and we've got various different backgrounds between myself, Nick, and Mike. So it ended up for a pretty good conversation, about the different aspects that we've had experience in and some of the trials and tribulations.
Speak about that a little bit. Your experience, Sarah. How did you get into the field? Did you come from a multimedia background, or did you come directly from logistics, spent all of your time here, and now podcasting is an extension of that?
Yeah, the latter. I started in this industry 20 plus years ago, and I have pretty much worked every department in logistics. So anything from customs to warehousing, to international transportation, air freight, ocean freight. And I've done sales for the last little while of my career, and then got started in marketing and really just learned everything that I know now, just through books and learning online, and because I'm constantly learning. I learn something new every day, and I'm a big believer in continued education. So So that's sort of how I got to where I am right now. And because of that continued education and wanting to learn more and more, I started listening to podcasts and thought, hey, I looked through the list of supply chain podcasts other than the Shipping Pod. And I thought, there's something missing here. There's something that we need to capitalize on. We need to make it a little bit more fun. Educational but fun. Put sexy back into supply chain. Like let's get out there and let's make it, an interesting industry for our youth.
Put it back. Like, was it there to begin with?
I don't think it was there. I think we're trying to create it.
Yeah, out of whole cloth. No, I mean I like the approach though. It's a smart approach. I myself have listened to a number of the logistics podcasts out there, and a lot of them are good. They're very informative, but they're pen and paper. You gotta really sit down and soak in the knowledge, or else it's really easy to zone out. So I'm with you on that. I think an edutainment focus, I think there's a wide open space within our market for that. And I think that both of us are trying to sort of capitalize that on different ways. You in a more interview-focused show, myself in a more topical-based type show. Nick, you're not on the marketing side. I read your bio before we got on the air. You have been in operations your whole time. Tell me a little bit about that. Do you take an interest in marketing now, and is podcasting kind of an in for you to start doing that?
I've always taken an interest in like podcasting and kind of like the media aspect. But I'm I guess a soldier here. I'm like the go-to person if stuff's going wrong.
Hello?
Hi.
Where did he go?
You can't do that during the middle of an interview. You can't put us on hold. How dare you?
This is so funny.
What? Is that Whitesnake?
Sorry, guys, that was an aircraft issue. I
understand.
That was my boss. That was the big boss man. I had to answer that. So where were we?
Well, we were talking about you doing the pod. You'd been in operations your whole time, and if you were using the podcast as a way to move more towards the marketing and sales side, or if it's just something that you wanted to lend your knowledge to.
Just lend my knowledge to. I would love to do this full time, but right now I don't think the market's really there to keep that thing going full time and like making it a main job. So right now it's definitely just kind of a side gig, and I quite enjoy it, and I love talking to new people and learning new stuff all the time. Like every time we have a show, I always take stuff home and stuff that I never thought of that way, or just because I was in the custom side of things and they're talking from like a freight forwarder side of things, and I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way, and it makes more sense to a lot of the puzzles I have to solve in my day-to-day jobs.
Well, you bring up a good point, too. Podcasting is a great medium. There's almost zero barrier to entry. You can even do it off a laptop, a mixer, and one microphone to an entire studio. It varies from, you can make as much of it or as little of it as you want. But in terms of monetizing a podcast, is that something that is in the interest of Two Babes Talk Supply Chain? How have you guys gone about that? I understand it's supplemental and sponsored by the company that you work for, but are you trying to go beyond that to potentially make more of the gig than what it currently is?
I would love it to go beyond that.
So we work on a sponsorship basis right now. Right now we've got 2 sponsors that allow us to keep it in studio and obviously keep it going. And then we've got other sponsorship levels that we have, and we're always looking for new sponsors. So it's definitely something that we want to be, doing more of.
Yeah, it's there's a number of different avenues to monetize podcasts now. There's sponsorship. There's things like Patreon, which are self donation things through fans. There's a variety of different ways, but I guess that's the $1 million question: how exactly to make a living exactly off podcasting. And I think even for most people, it's not there yet. Even big comedians, they use it as a supplement to get people to come out to their shows and to watch their Netflix special.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need a Netflix special.
Maybe
that would
we
be
do.
awesome.
we could team up on that. That'll be the way we finally turn this thing green.
Either that, or I think we need to start doing it daily, because I believe that some of the podcasts that I listen to are, I think, fairly profitable. I mean, I wouldn't know because I haven't really spoken to them directly, but the Top podcast with Nathan Latka about entrepreneurship, he does his daily. It's an interview style, and he's got some really great sponsors, and I believe it's one of his income sources for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one thing that some people aren't aware of in podcasting is, I mean, it's not a new medium. It's been around for well over 10 years, but every year it's been growing in listenership. There was just a report out that, podcasts are in the millions and millions and millions of listeners, as you and I know. But have you encountered on your end, in terms of promoting the show, getting coworkers to listen to it, getting colleagues to listen to it, what kind of good feedback and what kind of negative backlash have you heard just about the medium in general?
So we're getting a lot of really great feedback, particularly for the name. People tend to just love our name.
Until they see my face. No.
Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. Yeah, they tend to really love it. So it's fairly easy to get people to remember it, because that's one of the hurdles, right? You're talking to somebody and you mention the podcast and things like that. It's got to be memorable so that later on when they're on their phones or maybe in the podcast app, they go and search you and then download some episodes.
We also debated on our name for probably, I don't know, a couple weeks before we actually decided what the name was going to be. We had a lot of just conversations about how to make it catchy and get people's attention, so they're going to want to just hit that listen button just for 2 seconds. If we could get them to listen for 2 seconds, we've basically done our job if they stay tuned in.
Yeah.
Did you have what were some alternative names that you guys had?
Oh, I don't even remember. That was a year ago. Nick?
Yeah. Let me think. I got a good memory here.
I'd have to go back through my notes. I think I have them
you would have all those
somewhere.
Notes. Yeah.
But I don't have them on hand, Tim. I'll have to look them up and let you know.
I was going to see if there was maybe an amusing or funny one that
Oh, there was some funny ones.
You just couldn't go with.
Yeah, we definitely had some funny ones. But as far as challenges, I mean, we promote the podcast on LinkedIn and Instagram. We also have the website. We have a lot of free downloadable content that's on our website that our guests give us exclusively for our audience. So, we try different ways to engage and to let people know about new episodes and different things like that. I think a challenge for me is on the review side in iTunes, because as I just found out recently from you, because we're in Canada, we can't necessarily see the reviews from the U.S. or any other country. So when I go on my podcast app, I can only see any reviews from Canadians. And so there's a lot more reviews out there, but they're country specific, and it's really difficult to keep a pulse on that. I think some of the demographic information could be a little bit better as well.
Supposedly they're fixing that issue, because obviously it's very annoying when you can't see your reviews from other countries, especially here in Canada, and the bulk of your reviews are coming from the U.S. It would look to you or to U.S. users that there's not many reviews for the show. But I believe in the next iteration of iOS and in iTunes, they're fixing that. That was a part of Apple's last keynote. I don't know if it'll necessarily address the review thing, but I know that they're giving more advanced analytics, and I think it's going to be free. So you'll get stuff like start time, end time, very valuable analytics that we see, like on Libsyn, for example, great site, but our analytics on there are basically limited to technology and location. We don't have a ton of data coming back to us on how long listeners are actually, we don't know bounce rate or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it's funny, you say, so we do have a large audience in the U.S. I mean, obviously, U.S. and Canada. I don't know about you, but we've got a lot of listeners in China, and I believe it's Russia and Sweden as well.
Yeah, I was very surprised about the global reach of this. I knew that I would have an audience in the Northeast, but to have such a global reach in Europe and in China, Australia, it sort of confounds me. Even random people, I imagine they're on bases maybe or on ships, but in in remote parts of Africa. Like, what is where's this person listening to my show for? But, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing to just know that it's global.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys hear this or not in Canada, but one of the challenges that I face sometimes is with some older, I guess I wouldn't call them listeners because they're non-listeners, but you tell them about the podcast and the reaction is, well, I don't listen to podcasts. I never got into podcasts. I mean, it's like, well, you don't have to like completely close the door in your mind on it. It's basically, it's like AM talk radio without the commercials and generally better sound quality.
Yeah, and I'm finding that more and more people are getting into podcasts. Yeah, everybody that I talk to, or most people that I talk to now versus maybe a year ago, know what a podcast is.
And for me, it's actually funny. When I was younger, it was all radio, music. And now, since I know I'm getting old when I'm listening either to talk radio or podcasts when I'm driving home or going on any road trips now.
Are you listening to ours?
Mostly sports, but sure, we'll say ours. I don't know if I can just listen to myself. That'd be kind of weird. Me driving, it'd be like me talking to myself while I'm driving.
When I was younger, I thought you would like the quest for music would always be there. And now that I get older, I find myself listening to like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't have time to find anything on like Amazon Prime. I'll just put on like, 90s alternative hits or podcasts. Yeah. I never really discover anything new. It's just podcasts or music I heard 20 years ago.
Well, and the fact that you can subscribe to different podcasts, and so you can be listening to one on entrepreneurship, and then you can be listening to one on supply chain. Like, it changes, right? And you don't have to do that because it all depends on the queue and where the episodes are. So I really like that because it changes it up either, every 20 minutes or every half an hour or 45 minutes. So.
Yeah, and it's great when something goes mainstream, like Serial. Serial got a ton of mainstream attention, and for a lot of people, that is the first time they ever opened a podcast app or downloaded a podcast. And from there, they started to adopt other podcasts. But I always get excited when any show, even if I'm not a listener, can draw a large audience because it's going to get people normalized to the format, the medium, and kind of understand how easy and accessible it is to listen to this format.
Absolutely.
In Canada, we've covered some of the podcast stuff, but in terms of content and the tone and timbre in Canada, we know that. I mean, what are your guys' feelings over there on our guy down here? We got Donald Trump.
I don't know if we want to get too political on this.
Maybe not you in general, but what sort of like I guess the news or maybe the cultural reaction or just the general pulse.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. So I have just secured a company to come on in August, and they're going to be talking about Canada-U.S. trade. They are actually a Canada-California sort of trade organization that boosts trades between California and Canada. One is a lawyer, and I don't remember the background of the other gentleman, but they're going to be coming on to talk about Canada-U.S. trade, and it's funny because we haven't really had that yet. We haven't had that person come on and really talk about trade between the two countries since Trump took office. And I think it's going to be really interesting to hear their take as Americans that promote Canada. I think there's a lot of wait and see at the moment. Just because nobody really knows which direction he's going to take with different things. I mean, look at the softwood lumber and what he's put in place for that. I think people are a little bit nervous about NAFTA and what's going to happen there, but I don't really think anybody knows. Nobody really knows what he's thinking, and nobody knows what direction he's going to go. So I think there's a little bit of an unknown out there, which is creating, a little bit of anxiety in the supply chain community.
Well, Trudeau over here, he's a hero to, I guess, people who don't support Trump dissidents in certain aspects of the media, because for one, he didn't get caught in Trump's death grip handshake. He managed to he managed to survive that, but he hasn't cowed down to Trump's demands with NAFTA. And you mentioned the softwood lumber. he gave blowback to Trump on that and said that he would subsidize any tariffs that were imposed on lumber, which is, kind of doubling down, throwing down the gauntlet by Canada in that we're going to protect our interest in NAFTA.
Yeah.
I'm just laughing at the whole thing. This is only my belief. I think Trump's a good thing, and you guys needed change. And one way or another, change had to come. Whether it's going to work out in the long run or not, it's going to be good for change in general. NAFTA, to me, hasn't been looked at for like 20 some odd years, and it's time that we update kind of the current situations that we're having in this world to help both countries out, not to affect either country in either way, but to make it so it's fair all around, because there's certain things that we don't allow in Canada, and there's certain things that U.S. doesn't allow to come from Canada. So I think it's a good thing, and we'll just have to wait and kind of find out to see what happens.
Yeah, it is interesting, too, because when it started out, it was sort of like Trump was basically saying we were renegotiating NAFTA, and it mostly has to do with our deals with Mexico. But pretty quickly, it turned into, the discussion kind of just shifted focus to Canadian-U.S. relations and Trudeau versus Trump and what was going to happen there. And it's a lot of things with Trump, because he speaks with a lot of bluster. They get a lot of media attention really quick, but it's sort of a very ADHD type of focus, because it keeps moving. Then it's to China, then it's to Germany, then it's to
it's to
NATO.
Yeah.
Then it's to Russia. But yeah, well, speaking of hacking, this our industry was just hit yesterday, Maersk, with the ransomware attack, the Petya attack. Have you two heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard about it. It hasn't affected, I don't think, any company in Canada yet. Our defenses seem to be stronger than yours. No, but I have heard about it, and it's like a pretty big. And it's still ongoing, I believe.
Well, yeah, it affected 17 APM terminals, including Los Angeles and Rotterdam. You're right. I don't believe it hit a terminal in Canada. According to Maersk, they're losing $5.9 million an hour.
Oh,
Whoever
wow.
installed and put in the ransomware was asking for 300 Bitcoin ransom, which is about 759,000 USD. Bitcoin, fluctuates rapidly throughout the day, but right about now, when I just checked the converter, it was about 759,000 USD. If that was in a movie, that would be kind of a weak plot. You need them to ask for more. It's not even $1 million.
Yeah, like, where are you going to go? You're going to get caught.
But it seems like maybe that is like a proof of concept type hack. They're like, well, let's ask for something reasonable, get it through there. Maersk has said that if we were using a blockchain system, this issue wouldn't have happened. Maybe not. It seems like anything technology-based can be hacked nowadays, and if it can't be hacked today, it can be hacked tomorrow.
Yeah,
or in the
that's why
next
that
week.
never word is never any good, because you really don't.
Yeah, that seems like you're almost taunting people who really enjoy hacking. It's like, oh, really? Then I can be the guy to crack what you said is the uncrackable object. But it leads to an interesting part of discussion. In terms of supply chain moving forward in the next 5 to 10 years, where do you guys see things going as more automation comes in, which, again, opens itself up to hacking? But as we see automation, different delivery methods, self-driving cars, self-driving trucks, there's even self-driving ships that are going to be going on the water. How much of an evolution do you see happening, and how rapidly do you see that?
I hope I could fall asleep tonight, wake up tomorrow, and drones are going to be delivering me like my pizza for like the football game that's going to be playing or something.
I don't know if you know this, Tim, but drones have been a hot topic in almost every single conversation that we've had, because Nick is obsessed with drones.
I just want to be a pilot. Like, I want Amazon to hire me, and I will start doing deliveries. I could just sit in my little booth, drive my little drone, like playing Xbox. It'd be perfect.
I'm pretty sure, Nick, that they don't actually use a driver for that, because that would take away the cost savings. I think that they use GPS.
I know, but I'll have to be the GPS just because I'm more hands-on. You can't just let these things fly by themselves. It's dangerous out there.
Well, they have I just saw a YouTube video on it. They have a hoverboard that's a real hoverboard, not the not the Segway without a handlebar that they were calling hoverboards that blew up. Yeah, there's a real hoverboard that is drone based. I'm not sure the cost of it right now. It's probably pretty expensive because there's only a few, but could be a reality pretty soon, right?
It could be, but there might be a weight limit on there, so I might have to be careful.
Yeah. Well, you can start dieting now.
Yeah, that is true. I could start eating vegetables now.
But in all seriousness, I guess for me in the next 5 to 10 years for supply chain, I think there is going to be a ton of disruption. I think that especially in the logistics industry, it's very, very old school.
It'll become a lot more automated and stuff, yeah.
It is ripe for disruption, and I think that if people think that it's going to stay the way that it is, they're going to have a major wake-up call. And I'm talking within the next 2 years, 5 would be pushing it, I think. I think it's going to happen really fast. And I just hope people are ready for it because things are going to change, not only with, automation of vehicles or ships and things like that, but I just think in general we need to get more operational efficiency. And there are people out there that are working on that right now.
Do you see that hitting the border too? Because at the border there's still a decent amount of paperwork. I don't know if NAFTA is going to address that because a lot of times...
I laugh because I don't think it will hit the government departments that quick. With some of the aircraft that I deal with now, the customs I deal with still needs to receive faxes and stuff. Like they won't even take emails. They needed a fax. So I think the government will be a couple years behind. They're going to have to catch up quick. But even this year, our government put in some changes to their system, and it's been a year now since they made these changes, and they're still having issues with all their new system updates and changes that they made.
Yeah.
What else is new?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, they really... Something's going to have to give because I think the companies are going to move faster than the government, which is not going to help industry at all.
Are there any things that you think technology can address or supply chain issues that you see on your end that are unique to Canada, or maybe the problem itself is bigger in Canada than other places? I guess problems that you would like to see solved and you think that technology could solve them. Is there anything on the horizon? You've mentioned it's ripe for disruption, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, but that's on a whole global level. Is there anything on sort of a more macro level, Canadian-based level?
Well, as far as, one that I can bring up, which is customs. There's a GST, which is our tax and duty direct program, and it is so manual, it's unbelievable. So right now, what happens is the customers need to send the freight forwarder a check made out to the receiver general. And the person from the accounting department has to drive all of those checks over to Canada Customs the last day of the month and hand in all of those checks. And
so there's no automated payment or anything like that set up for them?
No.
Okay, so there is a system in place, the ARL system, that they're trying to go away from all these manual checks and stuff. But that's one of the changes that they made last year, and they can't fully implement it yet because it's still kind of glitching out. So they're trying to work on it, but it takes time with our government.
Yeah, well, when you look at this ransomware attack as well, it'll be interesting to see what people are lobbying for and which direction it will go. Obviously, we have to go more digital, but the more digital you go, the more you open yourself to hacking attacks and having your government being taken over. At least with these paper checks, they know that they have them. They can manually check them. But at the same time, it's a fast-moving world, and it takes forever. So I think you kind of have to weigh the risk versus the time factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that.
How about you guys? What do you guys see yourself evolving with this? Next 5 to 10 years, we know big things are on the horizon. You're working for this company, or you're doing your podcast. What's your growth strategy?
Well, The podcast itself, I would like to see it obviously continue and provide value to our listeners and obviously supply chain professionals. We're getting a lot of interest in it, so yeah, I definitely like to see that evolve and grow a little bit more, maybe with sponsorship or, different guests and maybe more higher profile guests as well, because obviously I've reached out to them to see if they would like to come on the show, because people do like to listen to them and hear from them about their supply chain, especially from, really large companies that have, multiple facets of their supply chain. So I'd like to see it sort of evolve that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would love to see this become a sort of natural extension of most companies' marketing departments. They should be doing podcasting. It's an easier format than something like webinars. It's very accessible. People can listen to it anywhere. There's no barrier to entry, and yeah, it's a great medium. If my listeners do want to go listen to your show, which I implore them to do, because I will also be on an episode in July sometime.
I believe, yeah, you might be. Your episode, I believe, is towards the end of July, if not the first week of August. That's going to be uploaded. We're a few episodes behind because we are taking a hiatus in July. So we've done a lot of pre-recording so that we make sure that we're still on a weekly basis.
You guys are smart, though. You keep that buffer of episodes there, so you never have a week where you're just dying to get a guest, right? Where you just have to have somebody or else there'll be no show.
Oh, well, don't get me wrong. There have been times.
Yeah, last-minute cancellations, and then we're like, okay, let's just interview us. Yeah. But for the most part, yeah.
I like that episode.
Yeah.
I like that episode.
Yeah, and we've got some contingency plans as well, but at the same time, we do like to stay 2 or 3 weeks ahead, so if something does pop up, we can still move forward and still produce weekly for our listeners.
And honestly, this is all possible due to Sarah. She is like the organizer of everything, so we got to give her most of this credit. She just calls me and says, Nick, we got to be here at this time, and I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out, and I'll get there.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, there for moral support. So if my listeners want to hear you, what's the best way to go? I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but let's remind them real quick, straight from the horse's mouth.
So on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, just search us. It's the number 2, Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. And then download some episodes or subscribe to us there. We would really, really, really love any reviews. If people love the show, just to give us a shout out on iTunes, that would be great. Otherwise, we've got some free downloadable content on our website, which is twobabestalksupplychain.com, as well as more information on the episodes and our guests. And you can also listen to the episodes on our website as well.
And the website is the number 2 Babes Talk Supply Chain.
Yeah, it's
correct.
all number 2 Babes Talk Supply Chain, yeah.
Yep, not TWO,
No.
The number 2.
The number 2.
Any parting thoughts for our listeners?
No, really, just thanks so much for having us on the show. We love what you're doing on the Shipping Pod, and we're glad that we had you as a guest, and we're so happy to be on your show. And thanks so much.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Best of luck, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Take care.
That was Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. Great conversation with them. Always good to hear from, our neighbors up north. The trials and tribulations of doing a podcast based in this industry. There aren't a ton of us out there, so great to rub noggins. Great to share knowledge and hear what they got going on. It's a great show. They interview so many different guests. I envy them for all the different guests that they are able to get. As mentioned during the interview, I believe that my episode with them will be airing at the end of July. I'll let you guys know when that comes up. We actually recorded that a few weeks ago. But, they're master planners, these guys. They have a bunch of episodes already recorded in the booty and ready to go. Thanks for tuning in today. We should have more episodes coming in July. July 4th is coming up, so there likely will not be one next week, but my goal is to get back to a regular schedule just because of some things on my end. Logistically, I wasn't able to. I actually touched on that on their show a little bit. I was talking to a couple different jobs. One of them thought the show might be a conflict of interest. I was close to joining that company and out of good faith decided to put the show on hold. That never, materialized, so I am still able to do the show as freely as I would like, which, is a good thing. To get our back episodes in the meantime, head over to theshippingpod.com. Check us out on iTunes, rate and review the show. We're also on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud. And SoundCloud, as you know, only the 2 most recent episodes. So they're there. But if you want it all, if you want the whole kit and caboodle, you got to go to Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. That's them. You got to go to theshippingpod.com or iTunes or Google Play. They're all there. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Any questions? info@theshippingpod.com. This has been Tim Dooner for The Shipping Pod saying so long and have a happy and safe 4th of July.
To the flag